Welcome back to Movie Arise. Today we will check out story called Henry's Crime. The story starts on a desolate stretch of New York where we see a toll gate where a man is doing his night shift as a cost gatherer. He is attractive, dreary, confronted and gazing around apathetically. The street lights and vehicles around him seem to have little enticement for him. He's either going about his business or passing the time at last. The night has reached a conclusion. Thus, he's heading back home with a similar super cold disposition. He's at home now, and his better half is serving him breakfast, and they trade good tidings. With similar cold articulation, his significant other calls out to him and asks Henry, "Do you still love me?" The response is obviously, "I don't yet." Henry doesn't change his appearance. Their talk uncovers that Debbie, Henry's better half, wants youngsters, yet Henry, while he loves youngsters but isn't keen on having their own. The doorbell rings, and Debbie appears, uninterested in who is coming down in light of the fact that she currently can't seem to get a response. Henry opens the entryways, and Eddie shows up. Apparently, Henry and Eddie were on occasion. There is another man. With him is Joe, who is spewing and lying on the ground. They figured out how to get him into the room. Eddie informed Henry that they are arranging a ball game. However, due to Joe's disease, they would not be able to take an interest. He welcomes Henry to join the game, since their player is at present incapable to play. However, this was not the baseball game. There was something different. They drive away, and Henry asks about the baseball. Eddie answers rapidly and demands that they stop at the following bank ATM with the goal that they could get some cash for longer. Beside Eddie and Henry, there are two different folks. When Henry showed up at the bank, and he told him that he ought to be in the vehicle and that the motor ought to be turned on, leave, and Henry sees that the vehicle is not lawful on the grounds that the motor wires were straightforwardly associated with turning over the motor. Did Eddie take the vehicle, and were they intending to ransack the bank at this moment? Indeed, Eddie and his partners enter the bank to rob it, yet they are totally ill-equipped. So the security caution ring bank workers start expelling as soon as Henry's vehicle begins. A safety officer draws his gun. Henry, who had no comprehension of what was going on, he lifted his hands respectfully and given up the guiltless. Henry has been captured for wrongdoing he didn't even commit. Henry is being grilled about his accomplices, but he gave no name. Perhaps he is excessively faithful to them, or perhaps he just knows Eddie's name. Well, they're currently in court, where the judge has condemned Henry to 3 years in jail for burglary. Everything is acknowledged completely by our docile, also quiet hero. Like residing in a cell or at home has no effect on him. He is fine with it. He is currently in a cell with Max Kahn, and he gives off the impression of feeling great. They trade good tidings and ask as to the justification for their constraint. Max is around 50 years of age, prepared, and quiet in the prison. The two of them became companions, and Max illuminates him about prison controls and acquaints him with other horrendous detainees. On the primary night at supper, Max expressed during protection that the genuine wrongdoing isn't perpetrated against you. Dreams. At the point when he questions Henry about his fantasy, he professes to be unaware of it and questions that he has at any point had a fantasy. Max tracks down this strangeness and considers what life would resemble without dreams. Max is an incredible fellow, and he is imparting to Henry the idea that will change his life everlastingly. For a man to accomplish his motivation, he should first have a fantasy. The film changes to a half a year after the fact scene. Debbie pays a visit to Henry in prison. They're still in a similar freezing temperament as the principal day. Debbie is truly here to illuminate Henry that she currently wishes to wed Joe. Do you review him? Yes, the person that was spewing before all else and conveying out the burglary. Henry grins as he salutes her. 1 more year has passed, and Henry appears to be acclimated in prison. Max is there with different detainees doing their shaves and letting them know stories. However, Henry has developed his facial hair, potentially because of the sadness that his better half is no longer with them. Except for us, we all know our Henry Fela. He isn't the type buy and take anything. Henry is going to be released early. However, he is not looking energized in her cell room, says goodbye to Maximize and goes. Appeared to be unsure about where he ought to go, so he heads to Debbie's previous. Joe welcomes him and shows up, indifferent about anything, treating Henry like a guest. He's a guest in the house. He previously lived with Debbie, his significant other. However, as confidence would have it, he is currently a stranger. Debbie serves him a brew while she isn't pregnant enough to resist the urge to panic. Henry's shocked. Joe needed to thank Henry for not giving his personality to the police during the burglary. Henry makes sense of skeptically that he had no clue about what his name was. Henry is currently destitute and jobless. Max had shown him the theory on the off chance that you do the time you should commit to wrongdoing, so he's currently remaining before the bank where he was once accused of the wrongdoing. A vehicle strikes him on the hip in this scene. Presents Julia Vainova, a neighborhood entertainer notable for her Buffalo promotions and who is as of now acting on the Cherry Plantation at the neighborhood theater. Julie is a kind and humane individual. She hollers at Henry for blocking traffic while guaranteeing him that he is okay. Julie is going about her business like she did not have any desire to be sued. Straightforward. The safety officer who confined Henry currently helps him and remembers him as the old bank looter as they stroll to the bistro so Julie can get him an espresso. Prior to leaving for practice in the bistro, Henry recalls Julie from Buffalo Toad on TV. Something lets me know Plane isn't similar at this point. Julie and Blunt have completed their espresso. Henry heads to the restroom. While peeing in the bistro latrine, Henry sees an old article posted on the wall that portrays how during disallowance of a passage once associated with the theater where Julie and different entertainers are practicing a play to the bank's shortcoming. Henry is perusing the paper while contemplating something. Presently is the second for Henry to do his wrongdoing. Henry first visits the jail to illuminate Max that he has at long last found his dream. Max was puzzled and amazed. Unexpectedly addressed what sort of dream it is to ransack a bank and afterward tell somebody about it in prison. He dismisses the idea immediately, contending that the prison is his home and that he won't come out just to burglarize a bank. Henry contends that he can't spend his whole life in prison and pass on in hopelessness. Moreover, he attempts to convince Max that he needs his help with breaking into the vault. Henry's thinking succeeds, and two amigos end up sharing a bison level. They go to the bistro where Henry saw the pamphlet, and Max sees the guide at 80 years old on the grounds that the bank structure had transformed. They needed to go to the bank first, and afterward to the theater for affirmation. In the bank, Max's cheat capacities help him in determining that there is still a passage. Then, at that point, they go to the theater, where Max claims to be an old entertainer from 30 quite a while ago. Henry acquainted him with Julie. Furthermore, with Julie's help, Max was capable to visit the entire theater. He was mindful and trusted in a chief of the passage. The director reports that the passage has been closed, and they presently have the changing area of one of their entertainers, Lopachine, and Henry asked Julie in the presentation hall for a date. Henry tells her to story, and they put it down on the calendar for Chinese food to start off their affectionate relationship. They go out and live it up. Our deadpan wooden kid is feeling sweet energies with Julie. Look great. Max concludes they should enter the dressing rooms, so he offers his help. Likewise persuades one regarding the entertainers to leave the plate with the goal that Henry may partake. That is right. Our wooden kid will currently play an entertainer in the cherry plantation to break into the vault, and they figure out how to convince the fierce chief who spends most of the film addresses Julie. Why she's a troublemaker, I don't know. He has against our lovable Julie. Max accepts Henry as a characteristic entertainer. Along these lines, he is persuaded that Lopachine will be a piece of cake for Henry, and yes, Henry substantiates himself by cutting through the noise. What's more, Max is in. They've broken the wall of the changing area where the passage is. Be that as it may, since the passage is loaded up with sand, they should now recover it, which requires the help of a third individual. So they go to Joe, who is savoring a bar, is disappointed with his business. Henry extends help and an employment opportunity. So the three start digging. Max and Joe are continually working in the passage, while Henry should likewise join in the practice. The routine appeared to be smooth until one night Forthright hindered them and told them that he was continually noticing them around the bank. They endeavor to lie, but honesty illuminates them that he knows about their targets and wishes to be a piece of it. Candid decides to play insider and illuminates them with the knowledge that there will be a month-to-month money trade where the bank will have a great many dollars, and that it is a one-time exchange. Since he is resigning, Candid's inspiration for joining the burglary is awful that the bank declined him. Alone when his significant other was biting the dust, so they enroll him yet stand by the crew. Isn't gotten done at this point. We actually have one terrible man remaining. Eddie Joe, who was intoxicated, got one night he needs to be in yet won't dig. Max becomes infuriated, yet they should enlist him too. During the training, Julie became unsettled and hurried to her room later. Directly blamed her for not playing out the acting that spoke to her. Henry, our darling, goes to offer his sympathies, and it is then that he says that he will leave during the premiere night of the Cherry Plantation show. Since Henry is presently a critical of the character in the play that starts is unthinkable without him. Therefore Julie ended up being significantly more miserable. She yells at him and advises him to leave her alone. Henry means to break into a bank vault during the play's premiere night execution, which he will help with in among acts and have nobody notice. Eddie's commitment is to utilize welding gear to enter the vault. I'm not sure that the way that they expected to do it in any other case, despite the fact that he's an Eddie, one in particular who knows how to enter a vault and utilize the important hardware. At long last, with Eddie's help, they have arrived at the vault on the opposite side. Henry is acting in the show, but he stays informed. Between the recesses they set the money in sacks and conveyed them into Lopan's room. Hello buddy. Eddie in the room changes into the old Eddie and undermines the maximum of the gun while coordinating Joe's take the money to the vehicle. He planned to take the money and keep it for himself anyway. Our con fellow has now shown his strength by punching Eddie to the ground. The three put the money in the vehicle. Henry requests that the driver pull over, so he might pause and think. He understands how much he needs to leave the ladies' loves. He surged back inside the theater, where Julie is acting on Cherry Plantations. Last scene, Max storms in and admits his everlasting love. He demands that Julie meet him in Moscow. They have their last kiss and it's finished. Henry's wrongdoing is about sentiments and the connect between sentiments and self-acknowledgement. Henry needed a bearing and drove a pitiable, miserable marriage. However, at that point, He feels a sense of urgency to do his wrongdoing. Maybe something brings fervor. Henry is a daring person, and when he met Julie and started to foster affection for her, his life started to change. As indicated by Julie, this play is about being constrained to move on to bigger and better things. Furthermore, begin again to make do. Henry will begin another existence with Julie. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell for more videos like this.